Hello and welcome to my brand new YouTube video channel where we're going to be discussing various things over the course of the coming weeks and months and hopefully years, knock on wood. But today I thought I'll start off by kicking off the introduction with how to pass the real estate exam for the first time. And the reason that I decided to make this video is because there's a lot of people after I passed my real estate exam that I spoke to said that it took them 3 times to pass, 4 times to pass. In some cases, I even heard 6 and 7 times, and I thought to myself, good God, if there's somebody out there that's watching this video, and if I can help them, or at least tell them how I did it, and if it can help them pass it the first time, then it will have been worth my while to spend 10, 12 minutes on this video. So here goes. This is a brand new video channel. I'm not good at editing the video, so if I cough in between or if I sneeze, this is how it's going to come out. But anyway, so let's start off with how to pass the real estate exam for the first time. But before we start and talk about that, I just want to give you some sobering facts. And the reason I say I want to give you some sobering facts is after I passed my real estate exam, I was reading in a newspaper article that 80% of the realtors after passing their test do not go on to become realtors and don't use it as a full-time job. In other words, if there were plumbers and nurses or teachers before they became a realtor, within 3-6 months time, they revert back to their previous jobs because they don't make a living out of being a real estate. And I just wanted to kind of give that as a caveat, just to kind of stress it to people who think this is a get-rich-quick scheme. That's absolutely not the case. I think there's an old principle of an 80-20 where 80% of the people do very average, if not below average, and 20% of the people are the ones that really make the living out of it and make the big income. So just bear that in mind. Don't go out and think, well, it's a get-rich-quick scheme, so I can go become a realtor and make $1 million in a year. I'm sure there are people that do that, but as a rule, it's a very tough business. But like I say, that's just a quick caveat just to get that out of the way. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that, before I tell you how I passed the real estate exam the first time, I just wanted to kind of backtrack it a little and tell you how it worked for me. So where I live, and I'm here in Georgia, there were 2 tracks. You could either do a classroom track or you could do the online program. And initially I wanted to do the classroom track because I'm very much of a social person. I like the idea of mixing with other students and sitting behind a desk, and if there was something that I wasn't sure of, I could put my hand up and say to the professor, well, how does that work and whatever. But the courses were running, Monday evening, Tuesday evening, Wednesday evening, and then I think you had to go all day Saturday. And that was compacted. It was like a 2-3 month program compacted in a month, in 4 weeks. And that was great. And that would have been great to do and get it out of the way. But I decided that was going to be too much for me because at the time I was holding down a full-time job, and my full-time job wouldn't allow me to get off at 5 o'clock so I can be in the class by 5:30 or whatever it was at the time. I can't remember. So I ended up doing the online course, and I can honestly tell you, if you do have a choice, I would always go for the online course first, because there's just a lot more flexibility. You're not cramming everything in a month. You can space it out to your own speed and your own level. The online course gave you 6 months to do it in, and I think I did it comfortably in 2 months, and I was ready to sit for the test thereafter. So that's the one thing to bear in mind. If you have the option of doing the online course, go ahead and do the online course, because even though there might be a classroom option where you live, I've spoke to people that have done the classroom situation, the classroom environment, and they actually wished that they hadn't because it was too quick information. So why do you want to pass the test the first time? Well, you might think, well, that's a bit of a dumb question. But the reason you want to pass it the first time is because, it costs a lot of money to do this test. I think where I live, I think it was like, I don't know, a couple of $100 or something to take the test. And if you fail it, and if you fail it, and if you fail it, and by the 4th time, you're talking a lot of money. So it's important to pass it the first time. And so the first key idea I want to give you in passing this real estate for the first time is, after you finish the test, after you finish your coursework, whether that be classroom or the online program, give yourself at least 4 weeks. Don't rush in and think, well, I'm going to go test out next week while I've got the material fresh in my mind, because you probably won't have the material as fresh in your mind as you think. You will have to preempt yourself and relearn certain things again, only because the material is very dense. there's a whole length and breadth of different kinds of assets and facets about the knowledge that you're going to be learning as a brand new realtor. And so I just think that you need at least 4 weeks to kind of pull the resources, pull the knowledge together so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with what you're dealing with. And so that's what I did. I took a clear 4 weeks out, and then I probably studied an hour to an hour and a half, 2-3 times, maybe even 4 times a week, certain weeks depending on whether I had anything going on or not. And I think if you allow yourself 4 weeks and then just study 1 to 1.5 hours every second night, if you will, I think you'll be very well groomed to then go and sit for the test. But don't rush it. Allow yourself 4 weeks. The other thing is, I think you've got to watch good quality videos on top of learning. On top of what you've learned in the classroom or on the online program, watch good quality YouTube videos. And there's 2 that I would highly recommend. One's called the Prep Agent, which, you know, when you go into YouTube and if you put in the search bar Prep Agent, it'll come up, and he's kind of quote unquote famous in the YouTube world because he puts out a lot of real estate videos, and that was really helpful. And then there's another gentleman called Travis Everett, who I think is in either North Carolina or South Carolina, one of the Carolinas anyway. And he's superb at explaining things and devolving situations so that you kind of piecemeal the whole picture and you have this aha moment like, oh, I get it. I get why it's that way or why that legal term is used in such a way. So those are 2 videos that I would recommend, the Prep Agent and Travis Everett. The other thing is, because there's a lot of material and a lot of this is just learning almost, if you will, a new language. You know, it's like a legal language at a fundamental level because you're learning new terminologies and there's a lot of legalese. It's good to be, it's good to know, have a few mnemonics so that you pick the first letter of certain words to group them, and it's a good way and a good technique of remembering certain bundles of groups or bundles of ideas. And I think mnemonics certainly helped me as well. And like I say, if you watch Prep Agent and Travis Everett, they will kind of help you, especially the Prep Agent, in bundling certain categories together as a mnemonic. And I think that will really help you come the test day where your mind's going 0 to 90 and you think, well, I remember this, well, I remember that. It's just good to have a bundle of mnemonics that you can just pull out of the air and say, okay, well, P was for that, A was for that, and so you can remember the little link words, and then obviously from the link words, find the right answer. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that struggle with maths, or math as they say here in the US. They somehow miss the S out, so we'll just call it maths or mathematics. It's pretty fundamental mathematics, and I didn't really have a lot of problems with it. But if you're one of these people where you have problems with it, other than practice, the only other suggestion I could give you is, if let's say the whole test is 90% literal and 10% maths, then I would, if you're not too good at maths, then I would do extra better on the 90% so that you get a high enough mark on the literal stuff where you will get a high enough mark to flip you over so that even if you don't do too well on the math side, you will still have scored enough for a passing grade. So that's the key idea that I would give you. Like I said, for me, I didn't find the maths too difficult. I thought it was pretty fundamental. But I do know a lot of people in the real estate world and in general that really don't have a good grip with mathematics, even though whether it's ratios or fractions or turning square feet to miles or, you know, a certain room size and equating it to another room size. You know, they kind of struggle. And I guess, you know, for most of us, maths is not a natural science, and so they've got to kind of really doubly think about it. So if you're not good with maths, the only thing I can tell you is practice doing the sums and the homework on the maths. And even if that doesn't leave you feel too confident, then go ahead and study the literal part of it doubly better so that you score a high enough mark. And then finally, I think there's something like about 120 questions, and there's 3 hours to take the test. Now, 3 hours is plenty of time, so that's the final key idea I want to give you. Don't rush it. You may, in your nervousness and in your panicness, try to make a snapshot decision, and you look at A, B, C, or D, and by the way, it's all multiple choice questions and answers. And you might look at a question and then you look at the answers, and the first answer might be a C. It'll just pop into your head and you think it's C. Well, I would urge you and I would caution you to not make snapshot decisions, because their job is to trip you up on the answers. And your job is to read the question thoroughly, and then read the answers thoroughly, and avoid a snapshot decision, because you will be prone to get it wrong. Because there'll be 2 questions that if you've studied well, you'll be able to discard. For example, you might read the question and say, well, it's definitely not A and it's definitely not D, so it's got to be B and C. And it's between that B and C that the line is so fine that it's, if you will, for want of a better expression, 50 shades of grey. And you'll look at the 2, the B and the C, and they'll be so fine in the answers that both answers will be right. But you want the better answer. There'll be one answer that will be right, and there'll be one that will be a better right answer. And it's the better right answer that you want, instead of just the right answer. So don't make snapshot decisions. Read the question and the answers thoroughly until you eventually find a link to the question and to the right answer, the better right answer, and then you can go with that. But like I said, as a rule, there's 1 or 2 that pretty much always scratch off and say, well, it's definitely not A or it's definitely not B, and then you'll be left with 2 answers, and it's in those 2 answers that people pass or fail. And then that's pretty much it. To put it in a nutshell, take at least 4 weeks prior to the test, study 1 to 1.5 hours every day, if not every second day, watch good quality YouTube videos, study, get used to doing the maths, and then avoid snapshot decision. And then finally, if I do have to give you a secret sauce, if you think, well, that's pretty much fundamental routine, I would say this was probably the secret sauce for me. It's called the Georgia Real Estate License Exam Prep Book. And when I first got that book, and I think I paid $35, $40 on Amazon for that book. And when I first got that book, I actually thought it was a waste of time, because the questions and answers on my online program were much more simpler than the ones in the book. The book seemed to be a lot more complex. And I just thought to myself, well, it can't be this hard. Otherwise, my online questions and answers would be a little bit more difficult. But then the more I dug deep into the book and the more I started to look at stuff on the internet, I realized that the questions and answers in the test will be more resembling or resemblance of the questions and answers in this book. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the book. The first 2/3 of that book is pretty much all questions. The last third is all answers. But it's in the answers where you really pick up the knowledge, because it'll tell you the answer for a certain question was C, and then it'll give you an explanation as to why it was C. And it will say it was C because, etc., etc., etc. And it's in that explanation that you will pick up new knowledge, and you will pick up why a certain answer is better than an alternate answer. And so that book I can't speak highly enough of. Like I say, initially I got it from Amazon, didn't think much of it. I actually gave it 1 star on Amazon. We went back and gave it 5 stars, because that book was the pivotal piece for me and the secret sauce, if you will, in passing that test. And that is pretty much it. Welcome to my new YouTube video channel. If you like, subscribe. I'll be making a lot of videos in the coming weeks, months, hopefully. Not just about real estate. Of course, real estate may form the backbone, but about all sorts of other topics, from finance to the stock market to just whatever takes my interest, and yours, I hope, as well, from the feedback that I get. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.